Well, first and foremost, I got to say, podcasting is fun. I'm really enjoying this. I mean, I really didn't know what to anticipate when I started this. Oh, in the summer months, because, I'm not really going to say that I succumbed to the peer pressure of podcasting. But, there was a couple of friends of mine that said, why don't you do a podcast? You've only spent 40 years of your life in broadcasting, and most of it was in radio, and that's all you did was talk. And I said, you got a good point. So I didn't have to argue much with it, and so if I like to talk and talk sports and then have others join me in on that conversation, I'm all about it. So welcome into the Oklahoma Sports Network and the Point After. And this is episode 12 already, believe it or not. And we are live from the Cameron Cetus podcast room. In fact, they're going to actually do some remodeling. They're going to move this. I'm going to have to find out where I'm at. I'm across the hall, I guess, because they're going to be using that. Cameron University is going to be using their podcasting a little bit more internally as well. So I guess the fever is hot and is catching on. Don't forget, 12 schools in the network, and we are proud to bring it to you each and every week. You can download us on the free mobile app. That's probably the best way and fastest way to connect to us on Apple and Android devices. We're also on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. YouTube, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Over 4,600 have already done that right now, and that's always growing each and every week, especially during football season. That is king around here in Oklahoma for sure. A lot of eyeballs on what's going on from week to week. So that brings us into our special studio guest with us. In fact, Chris Evans from the Guthrie Newspage is going to join me again, and I'm going to really kind of pick on you because you've kind of done this to yourself. You've put yourself out on social media with all of your picks weekly, and I don't do that as much. We got a lot of stuff to keep up with, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to use you as a great resource for high school football, because at the end of this race, and we talked to you before about this, with your involvement with the OSSAA and the NFHS, and as far as when the finals get here, and you and I are really going to spend a lot of close time with each other come the month of December. But here it is. This is coming up the 5th week, and I always hate to remind coaches in our coaches show that I said, as much as I love high school football, we're at this juncture, we're halfway through the regular season this coming week, and I hate it because it just goes too fast. I just really started to get into it, and all of a sudden it's disappearing, and 1 week in district play. So I want to ask you first, what stands out to you the most at this juncture from any class, any school? You can start with that.
Well, there are quite a few surprises. I guess 6A football, Jinx, they had the biggest transfer move-in class, however you want to call that. And they're 1-3. Now the toughest part of their schedule is behind them. They got to start moving forward, but parents aren't happy, and it's just a lot of chaos right now in Jinx. Wausau off to a great start. A big part of their schedule, a heavy part of their schedule is behind them as well. 6A2. Muskogee looks like the best team in 6A2. We see Stillwater go and beat Tulsa Union in overtime, but then can score a point against Carl Albert. And so I think 6A2 is a little pretty much top heavy this season with Stillwater, Choctaw, Muskogee. Maybe throw in Sand Springs, but after that, I'm not sure there's much there in 6A2. We'll see how the games play out. Class 5A football, Carl Albert, there's a chance. I think there is a chance that there might not be a team score on the Carl Albert Titans until maybe the playoffs.
Yeah, I know. I mean, because you saw them blank Stillwater just after you just said what Stillwater was able to do, and I thought, okay, Carl Albert will be tested this week. They're one of our schools on the network, and it seems like Guthrie's been the only one to do that, so that's near and dear to your heart. So maybe, and they play again at the Rock. Is that your place for that game?
Yeah, that'll be at Jesup Stadium, week 9 of the season, and Carl Albert. The thing with Carl Albert is, District 5A2 not really that tough this year, Eric. It's always been probably the toughest district in 5A for multiple decades now, but this year, there's teams rebuilding in that district, and the thing with Carl Albert, Coach Dunn's got a big task ahead of him because the schedule is going to allow the 64-0, the 49-0. So how are the Division I players on that team, even the Caden Davis, everybody on the team, how do they stay fresh? How do they stay motivated in these blowout games? And when the games get tougher, these guys have played in some tough games. Now the quarterbacks have not, but I think that's the biggest thing for Coach Dunn is to keep his team in practice motivated in the games, because I think the games are going to come easy to them. We'll see week 9 with Guthrie in a rival game. Anything can happen there. And then, but, I think they will. Coach Dunn does a great job, and that program does a great job. For when the playoffs are here, they'll be ready to go. But I think that'll be his biggest test here in the next several weeks.
Yeah, that's something to look forward to, because like you said, you see on the schedule on paper, and then, you talk about those students who, they have to play a half a game because they're pulled, and all the backups are playing the second half. So you're not even playing 4 quarters. And, on the other side of things, and you kind of refresh my memory of why the Collinsville-Dell City matchup was so lopsided, is because they lost their quarterback and was not able to play in that game. And so Dell City is that quiet team in 5A, just like they were last year, because for those on the West, and we're just going to say where we live, we kind of live on that West side understanding of football, and East side is kind of very familiar with us when it gets to playoff time. Well, Dell City has been in the East for the last 3 years, and they just quietly win. Let Carl Albert get all the one talk, and they made it to the finals for the first time since like the 70s. And then they didn't really get the game they wanted when they faced Carl Albert in the finals. But there's a lot to be determined yet in 5A. Now, what about in the lower ranks, like 4A and on down from there? What have you seen in your little crystal ball so far?
Well, we knew 4A was going to be highly competitive with the teams at the top. Blanchard and Tuttle, and the number 3-4 team, however you want to look at them, played outstanding schedules. They played a lot of 5A schools and held their own there, so we knew that would be the case there. The top 2 teams, no surprise, with Wagner, Elgin, Wagner, however you want to look at that, playing really, really good. So I think 4A, the top part of that, I think you can probably throw Bethany in there as a mild surprise right now, but we knew they're going to be a good team. But the top 4 in 4A are really, really good. So Elgin's ability to run the football, Washington has a little bit of star power in there. So the 4A playoffs is going to be outstanding. We'll see how district play lines up. But then you move down to Class 3A. Lincoln Christian is rolling pretty easy, much like Carl Alberts, the defending state champions. And, remember Lincoln Christian had their top 2, maybe top 2 out of 3 receivers move over to Jinx. So they had to replace those players, and they haven't really skipped a beat at all with Lincoln Christian over there. Sulphur, Pauls Valley, a very, very capable 3A teams. We'll see Pauls Valley this week. They played Plainview, who's undefeated. So Plainview actually beat Davis pretty handily last week. Not too surprised that they won, but how they won there. But still, 1 week into the district play, and we're starting to see a little bit more identity of these teams. Moore is 4-0 in 6A1 football. They've had no issues going 3-0 in years past. It's always been the 4-0 and the rest of the season after that. But, Ed Memorial's playing really good. We saw Dell City get beat by Ed Memorial in the first game of the year, 35-0. And so you're like, well, Memorial. And they have a great quarterback in McComb. He's committed to the University of Kansas. You're like, well, maybe Dell City with all the river and the fields, they're gone, and Adamas, they're gone. But Coach Robert Jones has them going. And you look at the Dell City schedule the rest of the way: Memorial, Hill, Rogers, Tahlequah, Claremore, Pryor. I think they'll roll into the playoffs. And with the injury to the Skylar Mormon kid at Collinsville, that really elevates Dell City. Obviously, with a big time road performance, even without Skylar Mormon, to win with 61-10. I think Collinsville had 10 points and 10 punts in that game. So Dell City shows you they are a physical ball club, and that's what really helps come late in the 5A playoffs.
Well, jumping back to 4A real quick, when you mentioned Bethany, and they've got those rival games like back to back. They're going to play Blanchard this week. They'll play Tuttle after that. Coming home to it. So I guess for them in that district, the pecking order will be a little bit more decided. And coaches do this all the time, because you and I were just kind of talking about presumingly how the district will shape out. And for those who are unfamiliar of high school football, and we know it like the back of our hand, it seems like, well, you should already know all this, but in the 8 teams, they take the top 4, and and that comes down to district points if you have ties. And I've seen nightmares of a 3-way tie for first. I've seen 3-way ties for fourth. That's for a kind of a strange situation there. But you can kind of guess is what coaches do, peeking ahead, even though coaches will admit that they don't do that. It's always the next opponent up. We're going to talk
Right.
about that team and that team only. Well, let's get realistic. They know 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then, and then from there, okay, well, if you're over in this district facing against Carl Albert, you say, well, I don't want to be fourth. I know that, we don't want that. So who's going to be second, third, and fourth? Another great matchup this week that I think will decide a little bit over in the 5A1 category is that Newcastle will play Midwest City. And so that's going to be the first of kind of, okay, where is the pecking order with, if you have MacArthur, Bishop McGuinness, Newcastle, and Midwest City, and then you have the rest that are kind of fighting on the outside looking in, who is it going to be? And you love, that's why you play these games. These matchups really do decide the playoff pecking order.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Coaches definitely look ahead, and they know if we win by 12, we go here. If we win by 11, we go here. They know the scenarios, and it's a crazy scenario. Usually when we're talking week 10 of the football games and who's going where in the playoffs, teams trying to host a first round playoff game or try to get into the playoffs. It's when you get district scenarios and playoff brackets, I'm the biggest geek when it comes to all that. But yeah, you're right. That Newcastle Midwest City game will be huge this week. I think that might be the deciding factor of the number 4 spot in that playoffs. And if you forecast it long range, Carl Albert probably win the district champion in 5A2. So if you lose, you're going to go to Carl Albert, and Midwest City has already seen that, don't want any part of that. Newcastle moving up from 4A, they've heard all about that. They've seen all the trophies. They don't want any part of that. So you much rather go to, I think, maybe Guthrie if you finish third in that district. Of course, Newcastle say, hey. Yeah, Newcastle's like, hey, we still got to play McGuinness and MacArthur. They're still, we'll still take our chances there. But if you were forecasting, you would certainly think, as you said, McGuinness had that 1-2 inside track.
Maybe.
But, we'll see.
I got to say that, MacArthur, and because I follow them and do the broadcast for them, they've lost to Midwest City the last 2 years. And so, they've got to prove themselves, and they have to go to Midwest City. So does Newcastle. You got to go to a very unfriendly environment when you're on the road and have to prove yourself. And I think last year, MacArthur was, between a senior quarterback and a sophomore quarterback, they really hadn't solidified that yet. The running game wasn't as it was. So, and that sophomore class that is juniors now has really matured. And I think I really saw that in the Guthrie game when I saw that connection with, quarterback to receiver, that was finally gelling, and that's a timing route. I said, oh, there's something that your eyebrow goes up a little bit to say, okay, there's something that you can hang your hat on with this group. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to see if they can prove themselves, but that's really on them. They're going to have to prove it, and not just, you got these other games that you kind of, like you say, in Carl Albert's position, you kind of just show up, and you hate to do that because that's not the mindset you want, but, certainly there. But, I know.
Well, I was going to say, I think MacArthur, all those things you said. In fact, we saw them week 11. You're like, that kid's a sophomore. That's a sophomore. He's a sophomore. Oh wow, guaranteed. When we're in that, MacArthur is a top 5 preseason team, and here we are, week 4, week 5 of the football season, and they are a top 5 team. And MacArthur is a better team than they were last year. Midwest City's still trying to find some identity on offense. I think they had to replace their quarterback. 0 points against Piedmont, 0 points against Carl Albert. I mean, those are good teams. They did get 40 against Pump City West, not very good team. Only 6 points against Dell City, and then kind of got things going with Southeast. So Midwest City's got to find their way offensively against good teams.
Okay. Also, and I maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, and we'll get to this because I'm going to have you as like a permanent weekly guest, for football, because you know how to talk about it. We talked a little bit about the possible concern because all of the state finals games are now at UCO. So every single one of them, before we had a little bit of a change out with that. So with that, you said the challenge could be in the OSSAA looking at some of those other sites as possible semifinals games for these classes. Is the word of, if you heard from either Van Shea or anybody else in the OSSAA, have they kind of looked to that and worked on those to kind of solidify that?
Well, they always had their ideal locations, and it's tough, especially when you get into the smaller schools, when you have one team on the west side and one team on the east side. You try to get those two try to find that neutral site.
Neutral
That
site,
neutral site is at Choctaw, is it UConn, is it Mustang? Are those three teams playing? Or are they not playing? So they have an idea if it's in if it's in Western Oklahoma, they love the Weatherford location there. If it's up in Northwest Oklahoma, they like the Alva location. And then if it's, trying to find that Oklahoma City, we've seen Southern Nazarene be a nice location as well.
Yes.
So, if they can use those college fields, they really like that. Western Heights has been a great host for some semifinal games. In fact, Class 5A.
I love doing game there.
Yeah. So I think they have, okay, let's get some of these schools here. Hey, put us on your radar. Please have us ready for this week. And then when we see who the teams are, then we can put that together. We saw Noble. We saw Noble last year be a great host for the 5A semifinals. So because you had, I think it was Carl Albert and Claremore, and it was the West Side school to host that year. So it was a little bit closer to the city, to the Oklahoma City area. So I think they have a bunch of things on the radar, just waiting to see which two teams are and what teams are willing to be host.
Well, outside of the thing that we mentioned about what surprised you, what are you looking forward to? I mean, we already talked about some matchups. Week 9 for your Carl Albert Guthrie is something else. There's still, we talked about some of the schools that had some of their bigger games behind them. We mentioned Bethany that still got Blanchard and Tuttle. Anybody else out there that you're kind of looking forward to that, since you geek out on this, put a little asterisk? Ooh, this will be a good matchup for this week. Who shall it be? Jones has Millwood, by the way, and that's one of our schools, and that really will kind of decide there. That's the one I've kind of highlighted. Jones and Millwood. How is that going to come out? That's going to be an interesting matchup for their district as well.
Absolutely. Heritage Hall and Millwood and Heritage Hall had a fantastic game, and we went to the very last seconds of that fourth quarter. Millwood, they had some players leave from their team from a year ago, but they haven't skipped a beat they're tough ball club there. But Jones Longhorns, they're talented as well. That will be a huge matchup. That's a top 5 matchup between those two programs. But, the other thing that is a little surprising, I guess Coach Madonna's probably not thinking that in Shawnee right now, but Shawnee right now 3-1. They finally got back into their football stadium. Remember, they had a tornado go through Shawnee, and so they had to play their football games at OBU. And, they're beating East Central, Duncan, and Ardmore, 3 teams that are trying to rebuild as well. But if you're Shawnee, you don't care who you beat. You're getting victories there. So they got Booker T. Washington this week. This is a big game for them as they try to get into the playoff picture for the first time in a long, long time. Bishop Kelly's 1-3 in that district, 5A3. McAllister, we'll see how they do. I think they should be in the top 2 of that district there, but. And then District 4, you got Dale City with the stronghold there, Collinsville with the injury. Tahlequah and Collinsville will be tough teams in 5A4 as well. So, and then the big schools, Jinx, they're 1-3. They have a fantastic running game in Katie Jones. He moved in from Broken Arrow a couple years ago. He's still rushing for over 100 yards per game. It's just right now Jinx is having a hard time throwing the football. And so, but again, a big part of their schedule is behind them. So there's a lot of great matchups this week. Do you still put Jinx? They're 1-3, but do you still put them in the top 5 because the East Side dominance in 6A football? Deer Creek, another surprise team this year, moving up to 6A1. They're 4-0 and feeling good about themselves. So there's a lot of football to be played, but Moore beating Mustang and Norman North's 0-4.
Yeah, don't sleep on Jinx. I mean, they're the Carl Albert factor of the class. That Carl Albert was 0-3 and ran the table and won a state title. So it's kind of hard to gauge that. And I know the fan base, like you say, they're not happy because, it's like what Bob Stoops said about the Sooners long ago. You've created a monster. Yep. Now that you have to feed the monster. And, the monster just has to be fed because, this is what the expectations are. So I think they'll figure it out. And you don't want to circle back around. And those are some of those non-district games, but circle around and get them again in the playoffs because by that time they've kind of figured stuff out. So it's kind of like I told you in our last meeting, with Wagner and Cushing had already beat Wagner in the regular season, and the fan base was just saying, "Hey, this is a cakewalk to our state finals." And I said,
Yeah.
"Hold on a second."
No.
These people, they know, they've been here, they've got the experience. You can't take that away from the program, from the kids. They never panic. So yeah, I just put them in that category of safely just keep them in mind and have them in your rear view mirror or your side mirror because they're coming up, so.
Yeah, if teams out there play Owasso, Union, and Bixby, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be 1-3 with that record there. And so
Yeah.
we've seen it before with Carl Albert and other programs. When you play them in the regular season, that's one thing. But when you see Jinx, Union, Carl Albert roll into Wagner, Elgin roll into your town in the playoffs, it catches your eye and it gets your attention. We saw Edmond Santa Fe go to Jinx last year and beat them in the first round, but then turn around and Jinx beats them Santa Fe in the playoffs when it really matters. So we'll see, but they got to get things figured out here pretty quick.
You having fun this year? I mean, as much as any year. I mean, I have never lost the enthusiasm and the excitement of high school football. Can't wait for it to get here. And like I said in the very beginning of the broadcast, is that week 5, I start to go, oh man, I just the fun's starting to slip away.
Yeah, it goes by fast. It's frustrating. I was talking about 6A2 earlier, and years past 6A2 was just loaded. It was a fun class. We'll see how it plays out this year, but Muskogee, defending state champions, looking really, really good. Stillwater, we talked about them. Choctaw, they're 2-2, and they playing a couple quarterbacks. I think Cash Williams
they're physical and they got something to prove because they were right on the outside looking in for these last several years. And 6A2, ever since Bixby moved up and moved out of there, we've seen different state champions. Now this would be the first opportunity that if Muskogee can do it, they can make a back-to-back. But Stillwater was the previous champion, and then you still have Choctaw. Wouldn't count them out as well because they've got a program that they want it. I guess they're hungry. The other ones experience that. So, it comes down to the final end, and we always say this, when you get to the Final Four, you got to have a little bit of stuff on your side because when you get the best of 32 in a semifinals, these are the best 4 teams left in the state, and there's reason for it. And so you respect it and you play the game. And so, I don't want to fast forward to that excitement because it'll be here before you know it, but that's how that goes,
Yeah. Stillwater, Choctaw, Muskogee, they don't want to see Sand Springs in the semifinal game. That'd be just as tough as that championship game there. So, but yeah, then after that, I mean, it's good to see Putnam City, and Putnam City North has some success. Southmore's trying to find their identity in 6A2. So there's a lot of programs that have not been there. We were talking about Wagner's and the Carl Alberts. Now that's kind of the excitement here as you see some teams. PC North, they hadn't won very many games in years past, but now they're feeling really, really good. They're more active on social media, so they're trying to. They have that new excitement in the air, and that's what 6A2 has done, as well as the 2A2s and A2s and the B2s. It's just kind of giving some teams some new identity. Some teams that we really haven't talked about now. We're like Holdenville, what they got going here? But here they are this year playing really, really. Pauls Valley, I know they got the Baylor commit move in from Wynnewood, but we have never been talking about Pauls Valley football in years past. But here are the Panthers. So that is kind of the excitement there. I mentioned Shawnee. That's a team that was high there for several years and then went really low when they had to move into 6A and. The numbers just weren't there, but now they're starting to come back. So those are some exciting things. We always talk about the same teams over and over, but it is kind of nice to see some new faces in there, some new excitement. But when it comes to playoff time, it might be the old names that we kind of get used to seeing again.
You mentioned Putnam City North, and I remember, this is dating me about going back doing broadcasts when Sam Bradford was a quarterback there, and he came to Lawton, and I was doing the broadcast there, and I always say my not claim to fame, it's my not understanding one game does not make a career.
Yeah.
I think Lawton High had 3 picks on Sam Bradford. He was committed to OU, and I went, man, what is OU thinking? I mean, Lawton High is just owning this kid, and they ended up winning.
Right.
And I remember back-to-back punt returns from Antonio Perkins on PC North. So, yeah, I'm dating myself to, these young kids. I go, now, who are these people? It's like, yeah, you gotta remind yourself of those eras. But for high school football fanatics like us, you remember those times and they stick
Absolutely.
with you forever. And then you can say, hey, I remember watching these kids win, and yeah, they went to Division I football and some of them went into the pros, and you go, man, I was so great to have a really great seat to see them early on. And I think that's another plus for doing this, is because you can see a lot of great talent, a lot of great kids that put this together, and they're coming earlier and earlier. Look at OU with a starting freshman quarterback, and look at the defensive back from Alabama getting the interception for Georgia in the end zone, and he's a true freshman. These kids were playing high school last year, and now they're on the biggest stage set scenes, and they're okay. You remember the day with, oh no, we got to redshirt our freshmen. We're going to keep them around here for 5 years. They can't play. And I'm not intimidated by the word freshman at all when it gets to that level, because they grow up a lot faster, it seems.
They do, and if you don't let them play as a freshman, they're probably not going to commit to your school. So you better let them play as a freshman. But Sam Bradford's just a 3-star. He snuck in there and won a Heisman. But you mentioned Sam Bradford being one. The one that for current purposes would be Creed Humphrey. I mean, Kansas City Chiefs are winning all the games, and I remember him at Shawnee. He played both sides of the football, and you would never thought he would be the highest paid center just looking at him. He was a state champion wrestler as well. But that's a perfect example of Creed Humphrey, and the left-hander snapping it to one of the great quarterbacks of all time. So I get to watch him all the time with where we're located to Kansas City.
I did yesterday. It's Kansas City on the TV again. Oh, it's nice. It's like the Dallas Cowboys and the Kansas City
and Dallas.
We're in the region. You go. They don't have to ever have to worry about buying the Sunday ticket, because
Nope.
You've got it on local TV. Before we close out, and I appreciate your time, I want you to give yourself a little pub of all the things or where they can find you, because you got some really neat standings that you post all the time, and I know you got the Guthrie Newspage that you do, but you do a lot of stuff for high school football. So this is a free promotion on your end. So that's my payback of all of where they can find you and get connected with you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, besides covering all the great things in high school football, my day-to-day is Guthrie Newspage, so I get to cover everything there is around Guthrie and Logan County. So I went on the deep end and started covering news several years back. Sports is a lot more fun than traffic accidents and fires and all that stuff. But no, I appreciate that. We have a weekly high school sports show called the High School Huddle. We do that every Wednesday night. It's a live show at 6 o'clock on our YouTube channel, Second Banana Media. And what really cool about that is we have some interactions. People can comment on there. We can kind of go back forward. We can talk all we want, but the interactions, hear people from the Tulsa area and the Alva area to kind of come together and talk about their stuff, because we don't get to see all the games, and we get to hear about the players, but we don't get to hear about as much as we like. So people always like to do that on the High School Huddle. Wednesday night, 6 o'clock, and we'll do that throughout the entire year, much like you will on the Oklahoma Sports Network.
That's cool. And how'd you come up with that name? The Second
High School
Banana.
Huddle? Oh, Second Banana Media. Okay. So Second Banana Media is basically a podcast network. High School Huddle is one. Our chamber has a podcast. So all these different podcasts that we do, it comes into Second Banana Media. I have a bald-headed friend that's really, really loud that sits next to me during football games, and he broadcasts.
He does sidelines for the championship games, in case you ever want to listen to that too. And he does a great job with that. Yeah, go ahead.
His name is Phil. And I went to the post office, and they said, hey, you got a box. So I went in there, and I got I pull out this little banana, and it's on a little trophy stand. It's right over here. And it said, Phil Nichols, Second Banana Media, or Phil Nichols, the Ed McMahon, Second Banana Media, to Chris Evans. So they were trying to make fun at Phil to be my second banana. And so we were thinking, well, we got to have a podcast network, because we're going to do more stuff than just sports. And I said, we knew media had to be in there. And I said, how about Second Banana Media? Loved it. So that's how Second Banana Media came about.
Oh, there you go. I always have a backstory to that, and I always want to find out how that nicknames are the same way. A guy will get a nickname. You say, how did you get that one?
Yeah, and all the high school kids have no idea that I'm the Johnny Carson and Phil is the Ed McMahon. They don't even know who that is, but us old timers get it.
That's true. It's amazing. One last thing, when you talk about day to day, it was several years ago. I remember they had it was a fellowship of Christian athletes or something. It was something, a function. They had all the students there, and they were eating dinner, and he was talking about, and he had a connection to the Dallas Cowboys, and he was talking about the glory years of the Dallas Cowboys. And I looked around at my friend and I said, every one of these kids in here have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. Nope. Troy Aikman. Oh yeah. Is he the guy calling games?
The broadcaster.
Broadcaster. He was a quarterback, and he had, and even that commercial. I have my son. The commercial where they have Emmitt Smith and they have all of them on the couch playing again. I had to name every one of those players, and I said, these are legends. And you're going, how did you not know? But they weren't around. They weren't born. And so, even for Sooners fans, I mean, my youngest is 25 and he was a year old when the Sooners won, and he's been a big OU fan, and he wants to see them win again. And I said, I was, I was around in 2000 to remember every bit of that, of that memory, and you weren't. And so you didn't get that. So it's, you kind of, you remember, like you're talking like your parents and grandparents back about the good old days of how it was.
Right.
That's how we live, so you live in the generation that So
yeah, Dallas Cowboys won the Super Bowl in 1996. This little guy here was in high school when that happened. So that's how long it has been for the Dallas Cowboys. Get your VCR tapes and watch the rewind.
Well, and I got my Lions shirt on today because we're in Monday Night Football. We're just I'm born Michigan. I was born outside of Detroit, and I've been a Lions fan my entire life. And boy, has that has been a long butt whooping type scenarios year after year, and bags over the head, and 0-16. To have a chance to go to the Super Bowl last year was incredible. So I'm looking for it. But Seattle, they're intimidating. We've lost to them 5 straight, including last year, and I remember that. So, but I'm not as intimidated. They're at Detroit, and I'm looking forward to a great Monday night matchup. So looking forward to that.
I always think about you when I see those Detroit Lions, and heck, Detroit Lions on Monday Night Football. How far have the Lions come?
I know. We've gotten a Sunday night already to start.
Yes.
On Monday night, we got our Thursday Thanksgiving, which they said, can't we get that to another team? It's unfair that Detroit always gets Thanksgiving. But not so much anymore. Well, Chris, I'm going to let you go, and I appreciate your time. And again, you're going to be my continued guest because you're the best to really kind of refine is the statewide of high school football, and we're knee deep in the middle of it right now.
Yes, we are. It's a fun season, as you mentioned. Already halfway done with the regular season after this week, and it goes by fast because we're in June and July. We're getting ready. It's like, is it ever going to get to August 30th for the first game of the year? Then it goes by here, and it's like, well, it's halfway gone. You're trying to slow down, try to savor it.
Yeah. Well, and you really can't. You just got to enjoy the ride. You tell seniors to do that all the time. You warn them that it's going to be here and gone, and just taking your senior season. So that's our last bit of advice. Okay, Chris Evans from the Guthrie Newspage, and I'm Eric Sherman. And of course, we'll continue on. We appreciate your time, Chris, and we'll continue with the Point After in our podcast each and every week. You can catch us there on Spotify. You can get us on Apple, and of course on YouTube for those who have subscribed to our YouTube channel. And that is the Point After for this week. And you've been watching a presentation and listening to this podcast on the Oklahoma Sports Network.